I think all of America needs to take a knee, or maybe take a step back. What I'm going to say is going to piss off everyone. Everyone. No matter who you are. Try to get through it. I'll make some good points. I promise. A few months back, my sister asked me why I voted for Donald Trump and then proceeded to spend so much time since bashing him. I explained that I never supported Donald Trump. I do support some of his policies. I still do. Some of his other policies, I'm against. I started to talk about the two-party paradigm. How Americans root for Republican or Democratic politicians like they're rooting for football teams. All that matters is my team wins. That works well for football teams, not so much for countries. Oh yeah, that's Tom Brady, shredding it. 5-time Super Bowl champion, the greatest of all time. After all, football is the topic of this controversy, and I'm a Patriot fan. I told you this video would piss you off. Back to my conversation with my friend. I explained that I try to remain true to a set of values, mainly constitutional values, and policies that generally shrink the size of government, reserve sovereignty, and return global power to the federal level, federal power to the state level, and state power to the local level. The smaller government is, the more your vote actually matters. That's why shrinking government is important. Why wouldn't you want your vote to count more? To actually count. I generally support policies that align with natural law and the rights of the individual person. I won't say man. I want the social justice warriors to make it through this video. Try not to get triggered. Let's start with the NFL. My problem with the NFL isn't that they play the national anthem before games or that they permit their athletes to take a knee to protest. My problem with the NFL is that they claim to be apolitical when they so often promote left-wing politics and ideology. If you're going to be political, be honest about it. The NFL has a wide viewership of young people, and the actions it takes just serve as another form of big government propaganda. In 2012, Kansas City Chiefs young and troubled linebacker Javon Belcher shot and murdered his girlfriend. A true tragedy. Shortly after the incident, NBC host Bob Costas lectured Americans during a live NFL broadcast, and I quote, "Our current gun culture ensures that more and more domestic disputes will end in the ultimate tragedy, and that more convenience store confrontations over loud music coming from a car will leave more teenage boys bloodied and dead. Handguns do not enhance our safety. They exacerbate our flaws." Sorry, Bob, but I'm guessing that the anger that led the 6'2", 230-pound linebacker to kill his girlfriend with a gun could have been used to kill her without a gun. Guns don't kill people. In fact, more people die from cars than they do from guns. Should we ban cars, Bob? I don't think so. Although that's coming. What guns do is ensure the basic freedom of all Americans from government power, which has undeniably proven by history to be corrupting and abusive of the inalienable rights that all people are born with. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I.e., that means property rights. I wonder if Bob Costas supported the 2012 roundup of guns by the socialist government of Venezuela. People are literally eating zoo animals in Venezuela now. Zoo animals. They are starving to death and can't rise against their tyrannical government. That's why we need guns. The NFL continued its assault on the Second Amendment of the Constitution and the basic belief sets of millions of Americans when it banned pro-gun advertisements from the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, every other Super Bowl ad seems to promote the ideology of the aforementioned social justice warrior. How many transgenders do you think we will see during the big game this year? Not that I have a problem with transgender people, just pointing out the blatant left-wing bias. Then, in 2016, the NFL threatened to fine Tennessee Titans linebacker Avery Williamson for wearing custom-made cleats designed to remember and honor the victims of 9/11. It's sad that this is a partisan political issue, but refusing to allow a player to honor 9/11 victims isn't exactly being friendly to people who have typically right-wing ideology. It is certainly not friendly to firefighters, police officers, and the armed forces who lost thousands of lives as a result. In fact, the main reason I wouldn't take a knee myself if I was an NFL player is that the American flag has special meaning to those who serve in the United States military. Special meaning because after a soldier sacrifices their lives for America, they are taken away and laid in their final resting spot with the flag draped over their casket. I wonder if most people realize that. My father is a Vietnam veteran and my grandfather was a World War II veteran, so it hits close to home. I mean, imagine you enlist in the military. Go to war to defend the liberty of your countrymen. Watch your best friend get murdered and buried in an American flag. Come home and find your fellow countrymen disrespecting the flag. That being said, protest is great. It is the bedrock of America, and the truth is, it is the very right to protest that veterans fight for and that makes America different and special in the first place. America isn't perfect, but try disrespecting the flag in another country. That is when you find out just how special the constitutional values of America are. People tend to equate patriotism with singing the national anthem, but the ultimate form of patriotism is to oppose the government, not support it. I don't think this guy, or this guy, or this guy would be against a peaceful protest against what some people perceive to be tyrannical government policy. It is the violent protests that I generally have a problem with. After all, before the Founding Fathers started the Revolutionary War and declared independence from England, they were considered to be terrorists. Peaceful protests should be applauded. Of course, that goes both ways, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to put their money into a product that they feel is hurting America. So if you want to boycott the NFL, boycott them. People have the same right to boycott products that they don't support as other people have the right to take a knee when the national anthem is sung. This is what makes America great. The truth is that I have waged my own anti-NFL, anti-ESPN, always in your face with progressive politics protest for years now, although I do watch the Patriots. It is the rest of you who are catching up with me. The ultra-progressive politics of ESPN might be the reason for my awakening. I just had to turn it off, and since I turned it off, I had to find something to do. I took up books. Good choice for me. Good choice for society, I would hope. I do draw the line, at least for myself, in calling for people's jobs, or calling for people to be blackballed. It's one thing for me to hold back my money and support. It's another for me to call for the destruction of a person's ability to make a living. I didn't support Google when they fired James Damore for writing the Google Diversity Memo, so I won't call for people like Colin Kaepernick to be blackballed for their political protests. America would be much better off if people engaged in spirited ideological and policy debate rather than attempting to win arguments via peer pressure, public shaming, and the destruction of individuals' ability to make a living. These tactics tend to be used by the left. I would warn the right about not becoming the left. Society needs intellectuality, not more and more dumbing down of the argument. Now to Kaepernick. Whether it's true or just in his mind, Kaepernick put himself on the line to stand up to what he believes to be government tyranny in the form of police brutality. Police officers are government officials, and it might not be your politics, but being honest with myself, it takes a high level of moral courage to stand alone on an island. Taking the knee essentially ended his career. Let's not make the devil out of a person who, at least in their mind, is standing up against government abuse. Essentially, Kaepernick believes that police officers in America are arresting and killing minorities at a disturbing rate. And sadly, the corporate mainstream media uses every incident possible to divide the country across racial lines. Every time a young black man is killed by a police officer, the media immediately declares it another incident of out-of-control police hunting down and murdering innocent young black men. What gets lost is any matter to whether or not the police officer's life was in danger, determining if the shooting was or was not justified based on situation and evidence. Some shootings are justified because a threat existed to the police officer's life or another person's life. And some police shootings are cold-blooded murder. The media doesn't care about truth, only promoting racial divide. If the media cared about truth, they would report that just as many unarmed white people are killed by police as unarmed black people. Now, the percentage of black people killed by police is higher. We will get to that. But the point is that the media doesn't seem to care when police kill unarmed white people. Who cares about color, unless you're attempting to divide? And then there is the fairly obvious point that most inner cities in America have been overwhelmingly liberal for 50 years. These cities, more often than not, have black mayors, black police chiefs, and police departments that are 50% minority. If the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, then the inner cities of America are unquestionably insane for voting for Democrat after Democrat. And don't assume I'm implying that Republicans are all that great. I'm not one of them either. And then there is the obvious point that very few people of any color, including blacks, are actually killed by police. Yet black-on-black crime statistics are extremely troubling. A young black man might be safer joining the army and going to the Middle East than going to high school in Chicago. Many police risk their lives to save the lives of black people every day. Of course, large numbers of black-on-black homicides is still no excuse for unjustified murders by police. The media omits these facts so that everything is thought about in absolutes and people take sides like they are rooting for football teams. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle. I'll start off by saying that Black Lives Matter. Ready for it? This doesn't mean I support the group named Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter might have started as a good movement, but George Soros used his funding to have radicals infiltrate the group, and now Black Lives Matter chants, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now?" And because of this George Soros infiltration, Black Lives Matter protests often devolve into violence against police officers, murdered police officers, and the destruction of innocent people's property, often black people's property. I can't support that. The implication that not supporting Black Lives Matter, the group, means you don't believe black lives actually do matter is a fallacy created to divide people. It goes along the lines of thinking that the Department of Defense is not actually the Department of War, or that North Korea calling itself the Democratic People's Republic of Korea means it's not actually a communist dictatorship that enslaves and slaughters its people. Oh, and let's not leave out that calling yourself an anti-fascist while using violence to suppress the free speech of others, as actual fascists do, doesn't make you anti-fascist. It makes you a fascist. Now to the police. Blue Lives Matter. That does not mean police have blanket authority to harass and murder people. A large percentage of the cops I have met are noble people who go out of their way to help others. That does not mean that all cops are good. I support good police officers, and I condemn bad police officers. And because police officers are given a monopoly on the use of force by the government, they should be held to the highest standard of checks and balances to ensure that the bad apples are not abusing the individual liberty of the American citizenry, whether that be black people or white people. Did I mention that police officers are government? And if you are a police officer and you have a partner who violates the individual liberty of a citizen, you are just as guilty by not reporting it. With great power comes great responsibility, and as always, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. What gets me angry is not police, but the position government policy puts police in. Did you know that in the 1990s, investigative reporter Gary Webb exposed that the CIA was running drugs from South America into American cities? Yeah. Do some research on CIA drug running, It still goes on today, and then, after running drugs into the cities of America, the government wages a war on drugs, which is really a war on the American citizen. It's this very war on drugs that forced police officers to be in a warlike mindset and environment. Like I said, the Middle East might be safer than some American inner cities. Remarkable. That's government for you. Of course, police shootings occur. How could they not? The government unconstitutionally institutes prohibition on drug sales and drug use, prohibiting people from committing an act that does not violate the natural law of any other person. Basically, if you don't harm another person, the government has no constitutional right to arrest you. But the Constitution is more like a prop for politicians these days, and the government doesn't respect or abide by it. The prohibition of drugs creates a black market, empowering drug cartels and gangs, the same way that alcohol prohibition led to the rise of the Italian Mafia and Al Capone. The violence we see at the southern border of America is largely due to this drug prohibition. The Mexican drug cartels have tremendous incentive to cross the southern border and exploit an enormously profitable black market created by drug prohibition in America. Because of this, the drug cartels flood America with violent criminals. And these criminals aren't violent because they are Mexican, they are violent because they are cartel or gang members. It's not racist or bigoted to want border protection to stop these violent people from entering into America. So let's either end drug prohibition or build a wall. Doing nothing is not a fair option for the American people. Anyway, back to the war on drugs. The inner cities in America are filled with illegal drugs. Illegal being the key word. The same government that runs drugs into America arrests people for drug use. This naturally affects inner cities more, not because evil white people are hunting down minorities, but because the drugs are going to affect condensed populations more than populations that are spread out. This is why a higher percentage of minorities are killed by police. The tyrannical policy of drug prohibition has hurt white families in America just as well. The evil here is not skin color, white or black, but the nature of government authority itself. Generations of the war on drugs has led to countless arrests of people. America, the land of the free, has the largest prison population in the world. How's that for a contradiction? Anyway, people get arrested more often in inner cities, and this has led to mass increase in one-parent households across people of all races, including white people. Sadly, the black community has been affected the most. People should be raising children, but instead find themselves locked in cages for non-violent crimes. That's where the cycle starts. One-parent homes are much more likely to be in poverty. Mothers or fathers raising children alone don't have the financial luxury to be around. So what happens? The state, the wonders that is the American federal education program, becomes the de facto parent. And seemingly every year, the high school graduation rate and academic performance in America drops. And the politicians don't care. They claim to care. Throw more money at the problem, that'll fix it. It doesn't. It must be the curriculum. Let's go with No Child Left Behind. Oh, that sucks? Let's go with Common Core. Oh, that sucks too. Well, it must be the teachers. New teachers get hired, and nothing changes. The issue is the federal government having control of the education system. And the politicians know this, but they don't care because the education system is actually a government indoctrination system. Who is more likely to make better economic and educational decisions for their child? Some shitbag politician lining his corrupt pockets off the sweat, blood, and tears of the people, or loving mothers who want the world for their individual children? Yeah, the Department of Education should be abolished, and education should be returned to the local level. Instead, school works as prison preparedness and government indoctrination. Young minds are forced to sit in classrooms for 8 hours a day and to be lectured about information that is completely out of context. No work actually matters, because as soon as the bell rings, work is stopped. Projects are not seen through to their completion and turned into an opportunity to make money in the free market. Hey, there's a concept. Imagine how effective school could be, how motivated young people would be if you allowed young people to follow their creativity, create products, and sell items in the real-world free market for personal gain. Maybe they would have some direction, maybe they would understand how much opportunity capitalism actually provides. But they're not provided that opportunity to make these connections because the school system is too busy dumbing down America. So instead, often without a father, coming from a family with little to no money, a mom who is overworked and underappreciated, young, beautiful, and creative minds, often black children from the inner cities, not able to get direction from broken and hopeless federal education system, turn to the one thing that gives them what they've been missing: gangs. Gangs provide family, direction, and economic opportunity that to these young people doesn't exist. Of course, it actually does exist, and that's why culture plays a role, but it's a cycle that continuously repeats. Young people join gangs. Gangs lead to more drugs and more violence, which again affects the inner cities with increased populations. Increased crime creates a need for increased police presence, and police are put into a warlike environment and mindset against American citizens. Young people either shoot each other or are arrested for selling or using drugs, and the cycle repeats. And all the mainstream media says is this is about evil white people, evil white police hunting down black people, stoking up racial divide and blinding society from the actual problem. Minorities are taught to blame evil white people, and institutional racism, white people blame black culture, and both play a role. Both completely ignoring the true culprit, the true perpetrator, government itself. And what solutions are offered? Politicians on the right offer greater police presence, increased police authority to fight gang violence, and the police state grows, the spy state grows, and civil liberties erode. Left-wing politicians blame institutional racism and white people and offer higher taxation, redistribution of wealth through government programs such as welfare, food stamps, unemployment, and increased money in the very education system causing the problem in the first place. Increasing the dependency of inner-city populations on the government, ensuring the cycle continues by limiting the actual economic opportunity of the free market and perpetuating the cycle. Every dollar that is taken from the population via taxation has an opportunity cost. Left-wing politicians frame this argument as the evil 1%. You know, class warfare. What they don't tell you is that the 1% is anyone who makes over $300,000 a year. These are the middle-class citizens of America who would have otherwise invested their money in small business if it hadn't been taxed away. People in these money brackets have mortgages, and high taxation makes it way too risky to invest the money back into the economy. You invest money to make more money, but with high taxation and high cost of living, the risk to invest becomes too great. The left-wing politicians attack the 1% because they are controlled by the 0.00001%, such as Amazon. So when Amazon calls for higher taxes on the 1%, it's because the 1% is every middle-class business in America that would provide competition. And of course, the megacorporations aren't affected. Watch my report titled Amazon, The Washington Post, and the CIA Exposed. Amazon hides its money in Luxembourg to avoid paying taxes. It's called Project Goldcrest. I read a lot. The corporations use left-wing politicians to regulate away any potential competition and destroy free market opportunity. You would be amazed how many government regulations are actually big corporations using government to create corporate monopolies through the use of government regulation. So it's actually the corporations regulating society. So now, the left-wing politicians please their corporate masters as they tell the public they are going after big corporations, and gain a permanent voting class by getting people on government programs such as food stamps. People aren't going to vote away their food stamps, and this includes white people. Surprise, the government wants more people to be dependent on the government. This is the trick that further perpetuates the cycle. This is why so many Democrats want the borders to be open. By the way, while we're on it, most Republicans also want the border to be open, and what you see on TV is mostly political theater. Government money being redistributed leads to people who receive monthly government checks and never advance. Private money invested by citizens leads to jobs and opportunity for people to build a skill set and advance economically into the middle class. Of course, people can only advance if they have a job and they are not being taxed at astronomical rates. Both solutions, left-wing or right-wing, are promises to increase government power to solve societal problems. The same government power and authority that caused the problems in the first place. White people did not cause these problems. Black people did not cause these problems. Unconstitutional government caused these problems. If the nation is going to heal, white and black people need to stop dividing along racial lines and realize the true perpetrator of the issues facing America, the unconstitutional abuse of government power. Society's problems grow as government grows. If the country is going to heal, the answer is to limit the power of the government. The bigger the government gets, the more abusive it becomes. Millions of people have been murdered in communist Cuba. Countless people have died on small rafts attempting to cross 90 miles of Caribbean water for a chance to experience the limited government authority of America. The people of Venezuela are currently starving to death under big government socialism. They have no means to defend themselves against tyranny. They should have guns. 50 million people died via execution or starvation under communism in the Soviet Union. 80 million people died via execution or starvation under Mao in communist China. 6 million Jewish people were rounded up and executed in only 5 years in Nazi Germany. Socialism and communism use economic class to divide people. Fascism uses race to divide people. The end result of both being a hateful population that provides the government increased size and authority to violate the natural rights provided to all men by birthright. The problem is collectivism itself. Freedom of the individual is the answer. America is going to be different. It has to be. We need to wake up as a society. The unconstitutional war on drugs needs to end. The expanding police state needs to shrink. The spy state needs to be abolished. The Department of Education needs to be abolished. The federal income tax, which didn't exist until 1913, needs to be abolished. Property taxes need to be abolished. Oh, and Congress has to declare war. Federal programs need to return to the state and local governments, because when power returns to local levels, the vote of the individual has more power and influence. Why wouldn't you want your vote to have more power and influence? Until that happens, let's stop violating the constitutional rights of one another. The government spends enough time doing that for us.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets sparked aloft, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled